Welcome back to the Electrify podcast, brought to you by the creators of Electrify Expo, North America's largest EV festival, coming to a major city near you. What a show we have for you today. Founder, president of Electrify Expo, BJ Birtwell, also joining us, president and CEO of SEMA, the organization, Specialty Equipment Market Association. If you don't know what SEMA is, you live under a rock. If you don't know what Electrify Expo is, you live under an electric rock. So, BJ, I'm super stoked to have you on. Mike Spagnola, Spags, aka the Lorax. He speaks for the trees. I gave him that nickname, and I don't know if you love that name or if you hate it.
I'm honored. I'm honored.
Well, you speak for the trees, man. You live, you breathe this stuff. You founded a company called Street Scene back in the day. You eventually sold that company. You live it, you breathe it because you're a big Nissan Datsun guy. Your son's building, what is it, Fugazi with Sung Kang. I mean, you have such a storied background. But Spags, first and foremost, thank you for joining us. BJ,
Thanks.
Go ahead, fire away, dude, because I feel like there's so much energy, no pun intended, about having Spags here on the podcast.
No, there really is. I mean, as someone who's been to the SEMA show 25 times, which means that it's been 25 years, if it wasn't for SEMA, I don't know if my, love and passion for the automobile would be where it's at today. And if my love for automobiles wasn't where it was at today, Electrify Expo probably wouldn't be here. So, I have just a fond appreciation for what SEMA has built, not only before me, but what it's done, especially in the last 25 years. And, I think that when we talked about lining up this call, I loved the juxtaposition around, well, Electrify Expo and SEMA, why are they even on a call together, right? I mean, you go to SEMA and it's known for, honestly, Spags, it's known for the kind of the antithesis of what Electrify Expo is. And we're eager to learn a little bit more about how you are reshaping SEMA to integrate potentially all things electric. But I know that you've also been very vocal, as I have been, about the legislation that has been coming into specifically your industry, and in many cases kind of cramping and bottlenecking and stalling or just creating confusion about what the future of your industry looks like. So really interested to talk to you about that. And I think this will be a great, I don't know, I was thinking Tyson Holyfield, but then I was thinking about our audience. It's probably more Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. So, but either way, I'm happy to have you here. It's going to be a great fight.
No, listen, number one, I'm honored to be on this, and I'm honored that you would ask me to be here. And I really see us as partners a lot more than competitors or coming from different sides of technology or whatever that might be. I really see us that we all have to work together to preserve the aftermarket and the ability to modify and customize our vehicles. And the more that we all work together in so many different pieces of this industry, the better off we're going to be, because we need a solid voice when it comes to protecting our industry. And that includes modification. That includes this lifestyle that we are all part of. And, if we're not careful, we could all be legislated out of doing any sort of modifications to any vehicles. So I have really spent the last several months trying to make sure that we are allies in so many areas, including you guys. I mean, you've done an amazing job with Electrified Expo. I happen to be in Long Beach a lot these days, and seeing what you've done and built is just amazing. And I'm proud of you and excited for you. I know your background with, McGuire's and all these different pieces of your background, BJ, but to see you kind of take this leap of faith and follow your passion and do what you're doing that's exciting to me. That really is. So
are you secret shopping me in Long Beach?
Jarod, I think, knows this, but my wife and I recently bought a condo down there. And I am 2 minutes from where you put on your expo. I ride my electric bike by there all the time.
Right on. Well, I'm interested to have real meaningful conversations about real topics on this podcast. And I approach these head on because I believe that Americans should have a choice on the type of car that they drive. And they should not be strong-armed into a position where their only option is one. And that in many ways is kind of a polarizing point of view in my industry, mostly because the early stages of this industry were really catered to people who were more environmentally minded and eco-conscious. And as I've told people, we've burned through that phase, we've burned through that audience, and we are now in a phase of people who are shopping EVs who are not really considering the environmental benefits of these cars and trucks, but they're really looking at these vehicles because of the lower cost of maintenance. They're looking at the thrill of the performance. They might be fascinated by the technology that's in these vehicles, and so there's a variety of new consumers coming into the space that are really not considering the positive environmental impact that these vehicles can bring. I mean, it's a byproduct of owning an EV, but it shouldn't be it really the only option for people. And I've faced some pushback for having that position. And I also just generally believe in free market capitalism. And I feel like, we should allow manufacturers to duke it out in the sandbox and allow consumers to make their decisions with their wallet about what they should drive. I mean, what's your position on it? I'm guessing we probably share that position.
I wonder if you've been stalking me, because that is exactly our position. We believe that EV is part of our future. It is a great technology. It's cool. I mean, you're seeing amazing horsepower and amazing torque and technology, and it's kind of this hot rodding in the future, even with conversions of gas-powered vehicles into EV. So we think it's awesome. We think that is part of our future. I'm exactly along with you. We don't think it should be government mandated. We think that technology should be able to continue and thrive. Innovation is what makes America great. And there was a lot of technology. If you're looking at it from a environmental or a clean air standpoint, then hydrogen, electric cars, biofuels, hybrids, all those different technologies, low emissions fuels. There's a study out that shows that if we adapt all those different technologies and we allow all those technologies to continue to flourish, we actually get to cleaner air sooner than if we just wait from an EV standpoint and from that technology to be able to grow and for adoption to the marketplace. So we are exactly with you. It's an amazing technology. It should be part of our future. It should not be government mandated. And the government, we call it, I say, putting your thumb on the scale and saying it's EV and EV only, and then hitting these targets, which clearly aren't going to be able to be met by 2026 in California to have, I think it's 33% adoption of EVs, and by 2033 to have 100% adoption by EVs. That's not going to be met. I was in Sacramento. I do a lot of legislative work now in this position, and I was in Sacramento and I was talking to some legislators. And one was really honest with me. And he said, Mike, look around these buildings. None of us will be here in 2033. And so, it is an aspirational goal to get there. But we all understand we're not going to get there, but we're pushing the envelope.
How do you think that the legislators that are making that type of legislation figure out these dates? Like, I've always wondered, because, I do talk to the manufacturers a lot. I'm a small business owner. I know how to forecast my business. How a government agency would come in and know how to forecast the future of an industry is kind of a head scratcher to me. Do you know how this happens? I mean, do they work with the auto manufacturers? Do they talk to them and say, hey, by this date, together we think we can achieve X? Or are they just kind of picking a date that they're hoping they can get to? How does it work?
Yeah, so from what I understand, it even goes a little further than that Carbon EPA set these emission standards where they want to be by 2040. And then they just say, okay, to get there, this is the adoption rate that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And they set it. And they, while there's some discussion with the OEs, look, I think the OEs, many of them are in favor. I mean, look, Tesla set the standard, right? And now some of these other OEs are chasing after that kind of even valuation, if you like. I think it's about valuation of these companies. And so they're trying to chase the Tesla valuation. If you look at, I'll just take General Motors, the infrastructure that they have around the world and the amount of money, you as a business owner understand what it takes in in investing in your company and in infrastructure and in equipment and people and buildings and all that sort of thing. If you look at what GM has invested across the world compared to what Tesla has, it is amazingly different, right? I mean, GM has invested billions and billions and billions of dollars, and yet their valuation is nowhere close to Tesla's, because Tesla's kind of on this leading edge of technology, and so a lot of these OEs are playing catch up to them. But they also recognize that look, at the end of the day, once this adoption starts to take place, they can build a vehicle for less money. There's less moving parts. It's like any other technology, like software, right? You have to invest a lot into software in the beginning to kind of get it up and going. But after that, you're selling subscriptions, and the profitability model's amazing. It's a bit of that for the car industry. So, there's definitely willingness on behalf of the OEs to get there. But honestly, I don't know that there's nothing that I have seen that says we can get to these numbers by these days for these reasons, other than it's been set. And I think they really understand that it's aspirational and they're not going to get there. And again,
how would you be? How
here.
would you be advising in those sorts of conversations with those legislators in that type of situation? I mean, how could you level set that conversation so that we're not creating these mandates that are unreachable?
So we look at it from a couple different areas. For SEMA, obviously there's an economic impact, and while that can be selfish in our ways, and I recognize that, but legislators also understand economic impact. So, for example, we're a $337 billion a year industry from an economic impact. By just trying to meet those standards in 2026 in California alone, we're talking about a $60 billion hit to the industry. And legislators start to all of a sudden pay attention to those sort of numbers, what they would do for jobs, what they would do for the economy. And again, this is, we're looking at this from a couple of different standpoints, right? Is it right for the government to say it is this technology and this technology only, and even setting the standards so that only EVs pass? And then what does that have on the economic, to the economy? How many people does it put out of jobs? I recognize that new jobs are going to come in for sure, but the timing of that, to shove all of that into a short time frame, isn't necessary. I mean, it's going to take time for adoption. We know that. We know that adoption of EVs is taking longer than maybe, I think we all forecast in the beginning. We know that setting up infrastructure is taking longer than we all forecast. Look, the technology is still evolving. I mean, I think everybody would recognize that EV technology is still evolving, and that's going to take time. And to shove all of that into a tighter period doesn't make sense. Legislators are starting to wake up to that, and they're understanding that. And even the OEs are seeing that, people are voting with their wallets, and that all these technologies have to be able to be recognized and applied. I think you saw the OEs saying it's EV and EV only as well. And now they're coming back and saying, well, we're going to develop more hybrids. EV is part of our future and is part of the overall package we're going to offer consumers. But we're going to offer consumers what they want. We're going to have an EV package. We're going to have an hybrid package. We're going to have an ICE package. But, we're going to still continue to have a diesel package. All those different technologies are in there, because they recognize that Americans are voting with their wallets.
Yeah, I mean, obviously your industry is made up of companies who are primarily producing aftermarket parts for ICE vehicles. We have a special zone within Electrify Expo called Electrify Show Off, where we feature a couple 100,000 square feet of customized EVs, customized trucks, and then the brands that are making those vehicles look cooler or go faster. And that's inherent in our DNA, right? But what's not inherent in your DNA are those same companies. So what is SEMA doing to educate and reshape and help a lot of these businesses who are SEMA members evolve to what is coming? Because even if there are not 100% mandates, let's say the take rate on EVs is 30%, 40%, it's still a huge number. And I'm not an analyst,
Sure.
and they're like weathermen.
Sure.
They forecast the weather from a week away, and you know what? You're usually wrong. So thank God I'm not an analyst, because that's a tough job to be. But let's just say, for example, we're still talking about a big chunk of the market of people who
Sure.
will try electric vehicles and be very satisfied and happy with them and continue to buy electric. So how will that impact your members? And then what is SEMA doing, if anything, to help those, I guess, brands stay relevant?
Yeah, I guess, again, this is the adoption rate, and this is going to take time. And so a couple of things there. About a third of our members are in ICE engines. So there's still 2/3 that aren't. But these technologies are going to affect them as well. So, a lot of manufacturers doing suspension and tires and wheels and all that, they're going to be affected by EVs, only in that you can set off a lot of issues with technology today by modifying suspension, by modifying tires and wheels and brakes and all of that. So we're spending a lot of time and research on that. So I'll talk about the ADAS portion of that we are really working through right now and really researching and studying. And let me come back to that. That 1/3 that is in the ICE program, it's going to take time for them to adopt and change. Some are going to make it, honestly, and some aren't, but they'll be replaced by EV or EV component manufacturers. We're really big on EV conversion, and we've been fostering that. It's really exciting. Look, when this thing started, and you guys are better experts at it than I am, but when people started to convert ICE vehicles into EVs, they were basically scrapping out Teslas and using Tesla components and all that. It's really exciting now to see battery pack manufacturers and component manufacturers and motors and all those components starting to come to the show. And we had 50 specific manufacturers of those kind of components at our show this last year. We auctioned off 22,000 square feet, not auctioned. We set aside 22,000 square feet for EV and the EV future to highlight these manufacturers so that we could show that these components were available. And I really see a lot of that as the hot rodders of tomorrow, right? These youth that are interested in converting their ICE vehicles to electric cars. So I see that as exciting. And by the way, even if you look at that from an environmental standpoint, that's probably more about recycling an older. It's a lot easier. There's less on the environment to take an older vehicle and convert it to an ICE engine to an EV engine motor than there is in building a whole new EV. If you look at carbon footprint, there's a lot less carbon footprint in converting a ICE-powered vehicle into an EV. And so, if we're really trying to look at just that environmental side, that's a pretty good component. And we were disappointed to see that we had a bill before California that would encourage people to convert ICE vehicles into EVs. Right now, if you buy an EV, there's a rebate. There's a California allowance that gives you $4,000 to $5,000 for buying an EV. And we asked for that same consideration for converting a ICE powered vehicle to an EV. And it made it all the way through legislation in California. And unfortunately, the governor 2 weeks ago vetoed that bill. And that was disappointing to see, because we think that is some, at least, encouragement to say, if we're really concerned about the environment and we're really concerned about those sort of conversion opportunities, that it should be an equal playing ground.
Why do you think a bill like that would be vetoed?
Well, I know that the California is, you could say a lot of things. So, there are those that believe that that maybe it's not in California's interests to convert those sort of vehicles, that there's actually better tax dollars by buying a brand new vehicle. Mm-hmm. You could say that there are OEs that are playing into the governor's hand. Those are all suspicions. I can't prove those sort of things. I know that the California is suffering from a budgetary standpoint. And so that was the reason that the governor has decided that from a budgetary standpoint, we can't afford to give that sort of dollars out right now. But we're giving them out when you buy a new vehicle. There are some that said, hey, well, if you can afford to convert an ICE vehicle to a EV, then you've already got money, so you don't need the money. But I could argue that for a $75,000, $100,000 Tesla, if you can afford to buy a $100,000 Tesla, why are you getting a rebate? So it's
well, on that note, there are on those incentives, especially federal incentives, there are some caps on the types of cars and the price of cars that you can buy that the incentives do not apply to.
Yeah.
But I'm really interested because I knew that this conversation was going to involve the environment, and it was going to involve conversations like climate change, and I agree with you. I think that the technology of specifically how we power these vehicles and the types of batteries that are being used and the minerals in those batteries are going to be changing so much over the next 5 years that the environmental impact that we're talking about today is really going to be old news compared to where we're going to be 5 years from now. There's all types of new technology, and I don't know what the right terminology is, but less critical minerals that are out there that are showing a lot of promise. But I feel like the more that we make buying an EV about the climate, the more we alienate many consumers from even considering EVs. So what I mean by that is, there are charts and reports and graphs out there that'll show you that a left-leaning population gravitates more to EVs than a right-leaning population. So if we already know that the left-leaning population is leaning to EVs, well, if we're all an advocate of EV adoption and that is driving broader EV adoption, that means we also have to include the right side of that equation. And if we know that the environmental message, the climate message, is what is preventing some of the right-leaning individuals from actually trying EVs, then the more that we make EVs about the environment, the less we include them in this opportunities. And what I'll tell you at my events is that what I've seen over the last 3 years of doing our shows is, and I think I've talked to Jarod about this, is that the first year or two was eco-conscious, environmentally minded consumers. They had already made up their minds to go electric before they even came to the Electrify Expo. And then once they were there, they figured out what they wanted to drive, and boom, they're off to the races. And then, last year it really started to change, where we started to see less of those people. We started to see more of the general American consumer who were coming in to check out this whole electric thing, and skeptics, that's who I kind of identify most with, because I was a skeptic. Like, I'm a car guy. I always felt like if I couldn't hear the rumble of a V8 or the sing of an inline-4 turbo, you're never getting me behind the wheel of that car. There's no doubt about it. Like, you're just not doing it. That car lacks a soul. And then I drove one, and then I had my light bulb moment, and my whole tune changed after that. And that's exactly what's happening at Electrify Expo. Is like, look, we're not talking about the environment at Electrify Expo. Are there environmental benefits of buying an EV? Positive ones? Yes, absolutely. But we don't talk about it because we let the thrill of the vehicle, we let the technology of these vehicles, the messaging around lower cost of maintenance and ownership really drive home really what the main reasons are to convert to electric. And that seems to be working a lot. So my whole point is saying that is that, I think in terms of driving broader EV adoption, the less we make this about the environment, the better. I mean, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I would agree. I would tell you that we saw that as well, but really what we saw from EV adoption was even people that were really excited about technology, that it was very much technology driven. And it was even technology driven from a point of, and I'll give you an example. I saw that in the styling side of EV adoption, where a lot of people will put styling accessories on a vehicle for the sake of styling accessories, a front splitter, some sort of body kit, that sort of thing. What we saw, at least early on, in talking to consumers and talking to people that were interested in accessorizing EVs, and even from the manufacturers that were developing products for EVs, SEMA manufacturers that were developing products for EVs, that it had to function. It really had to have a function. So putting a front spoiler on a Tesla or on any EV that didn't increase downforce or made economy, driving range worse, they weren't interested in that. They were less about style and more about what is the technology of this product. Mm-hmm. So I think that
who are these rational people?
Yeah.
Like, don't you remember the monster, like, I'm exaggerating, 2-foot wings that are on the back of a Integra Type R that really had no
function.
No
Right.
function, but
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
style. Yeah.
Yeah. All style. Now, does that still happen today? Does it still happen today in gas powered vehicles and EVs? Yes. But early adopters, I can't tell you how many times when we were offering, we help manufacturers develop products and take them to market. And that's through our SEMA Garage program. And we work alongside the OEs and we help these manufacturers develop products and take them to market. But I can't tell you how many were really interested in function more than style, and that continues today. I think it continues today in the ICE vehicles as well, but we saw it originally definitely in the EV side. The other piece of this that I kind of mentioned a second ago was just this technology and what's happening with this technology, and are we going to continue to be able to modify our vehicles? Look, this technology is expanding quickly. I mean, I'll give you an idea. If you take a Ford truck, whether that's a Lightning or an ICE-powered vehicle, changing the suspension height, you can still accessorize. People are wondering about, are you going to be able to accessorize EVs? Of course you can. You can take a Lightning, you can still lift it, you can still put bigger tires and wheels on it, you can still put all the truck bed accessories on it, you can still put all the overland camping accessories on it and all that. How is it affecting those technologies? It's affecting those technologies. It's affecting what does self-braking look like? What does lane change departure work look like? What do all those things look like? Whether that's an ICE-powered vehicle or an EV, we have to understand what those technologies are and how they're affecting the vehicle when you modify them. And, I think that's where we really have to focus on. And we're doing a lot of that work right now.
Does that open up an opportunity for somebody in the aftermarket to be able to develop software to, remedy those nuances?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I can tell you what we're doing right now in the SEMA Garage. SEMA Garage are these product development centers. We have one here in California, and we opened one last year in Plymouth, Michigan. We call it Detroit. But in there, we developed an ADAS center, first of its kind, really in the U.S. for the aftermarket. And we were very intentional about what this this ADAS center would look like. For example, we bought this 45,000 square foot warehouse, and we sectioned off a place for this ADAS technology. Well, to be OE specific and to make sure that these technologies are working properly and you test them properly, the floor has to be within 1 degree slope. You can't be more than 1 degree. We literally took 5,000 square feet of this warehouse, tore out the cement, and poured 8 inches deep of new floor so that it was within 1 degree. The colors on the walls had to be a certain color. The lighting had to be specific. And then we bought all the OE ADAS equipment, and we bought all the aftermarket equipment. And then we hired guys from Bosch and from different technologies within ADAS to help us understand what's going on. And then we're doing these tests both dynamically and static. So, for example, we'll bring in the new F-150, and we test it at stock height, both static and then dynamic. And dynamic is you've probably all seen when in these test tracks when a vehicle's driving down the road and then this balloon of a person comes out in front of it or a car comes out in front of it, and does the vehicle stop on time? We're doing that testing. It's $100,000 per vehicle test. But we're doing it at stock height, we're doing it at leveling kits, we're doing it at 3-inch lift, and we're doing it at 6-inch lift.
Wow.
And we're understanding what happens to those vehicles. Now, there's no mandate right now. There is no, when you look at emissions, for example, there's a standard. You have to beat a certain amount of emissions coming out of a tailpipe. There are no ADAS standards yet. All these technologies are on vehicles, but they're coming. Those mandates are coming. So NHTSA is working on, for example, self-braking, what that's going to look like in 2029. And we're going to have to all march to that standard. And I tell you all this because this is where we all have to work together, because it's going to affect not just kind of, if you want to look at SEMA's business or the current ICE engine side of the business, it's going to affect every part of us being able to modify a vehicle. Right now, if you put a larger tire and wheel on a 24 Silverado, you cannot recalculate the speedometer. There's no way to do it right now. So yes, to answer your question, BJ, that opens all sorts of opportunity. And we see that I'm encouraging the guys that are doing tunes right now to look at the ability to reshape software to allow for modifications. And we know it's out there. For example, if you buy an OE kit for a Silverado, lift kit, or for a Toyota, they do have software package that will modify what those cameras see. So I think that's a tremendous opportunity. And again, this kind of goes back again to this whole adoption. It's all going to take time. And if we force these timelines, number one, they're not going to be met. And I think you're going to see, if we're not careful, if these OEs can't get to adoption by the dates that the government has set, a couple things happen. Obviously, consumers have to be willing to buy the vehicles. And if they're not willing to buy the vehicles and we set these dates and the government is hard on these dates, we're going to be looking at bailouts of OEs if we're not careful, which is not good for anybody. So I'm completely with you as far as allowing, look, if you just look at the history of SEMA, it's all innovation, right? And we should allow innovation to continue. We should allow innovation to continue in EV conversion, in all sorts of technologies, if we're looking at it from a clean air standpoint, or if we're looking at just what's cool and what's out there. We should allow technology. America's been built on the innovation of new and exciting products, and we should allow that to be continued to be fostered and grow. I'm huge about that.
BJ, when do you think it's realistic for that conversion to happen? We keep bringing up these numbers of 30% in California. What do you think? What's a realistic year, time, conversion? Because you're asking Mike all these questions, but here you are really close to it. And here, just recently Ford just announced their EV development building in Long Beach, right? California. Yeah. Like, how cool and exciting is that? And Ford, I think, has really treaded lightly, as opposed to Dodge being a little more aggressive. Toyota saying, look, we're just going to maintain. I mean, they practically invented the hybrid, right? So giving you time to think about that, BJ. So I'm letting you buffer right now.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. I'm no analyst, that's for sure. I'll give you my opinion, my personal opinion in that. Look, up until about 3 years ago, this was really a one-horse race. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't really a lot of selection for consumers across the board for them to choose from. The selection that they did have was great in terms of the manufacturer, Tesla. I mean, they've been crushing it, but there wasn't a variety of different models across different segments of the industry that were really catering to what the American consumer wanted. 2024 is starting to offer that. So I love that the offerings are now out there. You can get a 3-row SUV, and there's more coming. You can get a compact car. You can get a midsize. You can get a pickup truck. Like, these were not conversations we were having 3 years ago. So now we have a selection, and 2022 and most of 2023, the messaging around EVs was very positive. And then we started to plan for primary elections, and the messaging started to shift. I think we need to get out of the general election and past November for the dust to settle, and for the messaging to really be unified, because it's gotten very gray and very muddy, and that's unfair not only to consumers, it's unfair to the manufacturers who have spent billions of dollars retooling factories and putting game plans together to accommodate the surge of EV adoption, which they've done an incredible job of doing. Like, the auto manufacturers have just killed it from getting tooled up and really shifting their businesses to something entirely different. And it's really been the lack of infrastructure that at this point today is really holding back EV adoption. Because if you can charge at home, there's no reason why, and you're a 2-car family, there's no reason why one of those cars shouldn't be electric. Von Gittin Jr. popped that in my head a few months ago, and it was like, absolutely, that's absolutely the case. I mean, I'm able to charge at home, and I've owned my vehicle for 2.5 years, my EV, and I've charged in the wild once, and it wasn't even necessary. I just did it because it was there. So, like, it's not even a thing for 50% of the population who are able to charge at home. But if we're really trying to drive broader EV adoption and we need EV infrastructure, that's what's going to hold us back, I think, from achieving some more of these critical mass, if we can even call it that, levels. So the other thing that's happening, Jarod, that is going to change things a lot, and you've probably seen legislation start to hit that is making this a little bit tougher. But the Chinese have some very competitive EVs that are coming to market.
Right.
And whether those EVs come to market next year or in 2026, I mean, that's going to open up a whole new category price point that American consumers can get into these vehicles, but they're not going to know who these consumers are. I'm sorry, they're not going to know who these brands are. They'll have never heard of brands like BYD or NIO or some of these others who are making fantastic vehicles that are going to be very competitive here right away. So when I talk to hundreds of consumers, even thousands of consumers every year, they are in the purchase funnel for buying an EV. And when they come to our expo and they talk to me, I don't hear the same things that you read in Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. I hear genuine interest in EVs, people who want to go electric but just have basic questions about what it means to go electric. And people are paying money to come to our event to drive, ride, and demo stuff and to rip around on e-bikes. It's like people are paying money to come try this stuff out. So I mean, no crystal ball. I think that the technology that's coming too, I'm so pumped about the technology that's coming for batteries in our industry that's going to change things considerably. So I think that's going to also have an impact on how consumers are going to adopt EVs. Because if I don't think the general public understands that, but at some point when we start talking about solid states right around the corner, or there's another type of way to innovate and produce a battery that is coming soon, and it's going to change how we've been driving, maybe even change how we charge, that is also a hurdle and a challenge that's coming. So all I see is that Ford just had a report from last quarter, and they're way up on their EV sales. So I keep seeing more and more interest in EVs. Even though when you read the news today, and like I said, we're in an election year, it's all over the place. It's just a big roller coaster. So, long answer to that is, I don't know. I think we're 3 to 4 years out from things level setting and there being enough offerings out there from a variety of different manufacturers. But I just see EV sales trajectory continuing to go very, very steep. And it may not be at where the analysts predicted 3 or 4 or 5, 10 years ago. Why would it? These guys, they're putting forecasts together in a vacuum. I mean, I don't hold it against them, but I do hold it against us still using those forecasts that are 3 years old or 2 years old as some sort of like yellow brick road of where the industry is headed, because that's just not clear.
Well, you're setting up an opportunity for failure, right? I mean, if we're saying we got to have 33% in adoption by 2026, we're not going to get there, and we should be honest about it, and the government should be honest about it. And again, adoption is going to take time. All of this is going to take longer time. Technology is going to continue to grow, right? I mean, there are still those that have range anxiety. There's all of that going on, and it's just going to take time. I was an early adopter on a video camera, and I remember my first beta video camera. I'm old enough to remember having this camera with this side satchel that I had to have, which was the rest of the camera and the battery pack and all of that. And I carried this thing around, and it was on a tape that was, huge. And we saw all the adoption come down to where today you're using this for a video camera. I liken the electric, the EV to that same kind of look. It's going to take time. It's exciting. It's money's going to be poured into it. It's going to happen. And again, we should allow technology in every field to continue to adopt. And I'm not sure that we need to put government incentives on it. Look, we didn't need government incentives to, this was a great technology and people adopted it. Mm-hmm. There was no need for us to step in and say, we're going to A, force you to buy that phone, and B, we're going to pay you to buy that phone, and we're going to give you government incentives to buy it.
Well, also,
it's great. People will adopt to it. I don't see anybody. I really don't. There's people that are saying, "Oh, it's gas-powered cars forever, and we're going to whatever." There's people that do that, but people look, our industry is all about technology. It's all about innovation. It's all about, I mean, it's pretty cool now to be able to get, they're talking about 1,100 horsepower now out of some EVs, right? Mm-hmm. That it's incredible, right? It's just.
But aren't you in a little bit of a hot seat over there at SEMA? I mean, let's be honest. Like, a lot of the guys, I mean, these are old school ICE guys that have built businesses on ICE, sure. And they see something coming, and you have to walk this line of being the visionary for SEMA and making sure you safeguard its future, and at the same time, appeasing a member base that is really just probably telling you this EV stuff is ridiculous. It's nonsense. I mean, I'm sure you've had conversations like that.
Yeah, I don't know that it's gotten that radical, but it is. You're always trying to balance every. Look, there's guys that think lowered trucks are great, and there's guys that think raised trucks are great, and Chevy versus Ford, all that sort of stuff goes on. I'll tell you a story. I did.
You're being too nice. You're being way too kind.
He's president and CEO. He's got to play all sides. Also, I got to bring up. You had a beta tape, so it's obsolete, right? So you invested early. You're early adopter, which beta tapes are dead. Mini discs, right? Like music, and we still default back to vinyl as the best sounding audio. So the relevancy and being early adopter sometimes hurts you. But here we are complimenting ICE and this and hybrids. So if you don't stay relevant, you're going to die on the vine. That goes to all the companies out there. If it's wheels, like you say, here's Volk, for sure, which we love, Rays and TE37, right? Here's Volk making a EV specific TE37 that's lighter, more efficient. That's cool. That's sick. So anyways, go ahead. Beta tape.
So look, there's manufacturers that built parts 30 years ago that aren't around anymore. So we're going to have to adopt. I did this presentation a few months back in front of a big, automotive group, and I said, I think Jarod, you may have heard the story, but I said I want to tell you about this article that says the headline was "Does our industry have 5 more years?" And it said it listed all these issues. It listed the fact that technology is getting harder and harder, and are we going to be able to work on our own vehicles? And it went into a whole thing about technology and would we be able to modify and work on our own vehicles, because all these technologies are making it harder and harder to do. It talked about government regulation and how government is stepping in and making it harder for us to modify vehicles. It talked about the youth. Are the youth going to have the same passion? And kids are waiting longer to drive their vehicles, and they're not as interested in modifying their vehicles as they are in music and all these other areas. And it went through these whole thing, these things that said, we're worried, does our industry have 5 more years? And then I showed the article. The article was from 1971. And yet we continue to find ways to do all those things. And I'm just a big believer that SEMA's going to look a lot different, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now from, look, I'm in my chair, I am having to deal with issues that my predecessor didn't. And the guy, when I step down, the guy, after me is going to have those same issues. Yeah, we're going to have to pull people along, BJ. There's no doubt. And we are going to have to help them understand those technologies. I'm really excited about more and more manufacturers coming in on the conversion side. I do think that's the hot rodders of tomorrow. I think that my kids are, my kids are into the automotive industry. Jarod, you know that, but my grandkids now, I'm asking them, what it is that they're going to want to build. And we are looking at maybe doing a conversion, for my oldest grandchild, because I just think that's the hot rodders of tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So, but again, it's I think everybody's worried that this is going to shut down and be different overnight. I do think that government intervention has hurt the adoption of some of that, because people definitely want to push back because of that. I mean, look, even in the regs, there is controversy even in the regs. If you look at the new EPA regs, they used to measure carbon footprint from cradle to grave. So they would measure building an EV or an ICE engine vehicle from the carbon footprint of manufacturing that vehicle to the time it was on the road to the time of recycling of that vehicle. In the new regs, they took out for EV, they took out the carbon footprint for manufacturing and for recycling. That just raises suspicion as to, why is the government putting their thumb on the scale and saying it's EV and it's EV only, and is there some coercion with China and battery technology and all that? I don't know if any of that exists. It doesn't help matters any. It just doesn't help matters any. So
I haven't seen that. I have seen the conversations about EV manufacturing, including mining the minerals and manufacturing
that's the other big
vehicles, and then getting to that year and a half, 2 year point where the separation between owning a gas vehicle and owning an EV is so far removed. It makes obviously a lot more environmental sense to own an EV.
Right.
But I mean, your point is well taken. I think that government intervention has been hurting, and the government messaging has been hurting our ability to grow faster as an industry. And it's because we're primarily alienating a segment of the audience that I think would actually be pretty interested in EVs, but they don't want to be told what they should drive.
I just got to finish your sentence for you. That they don't want to be told what to drive.
That's right. So, let's see what happens after November. But I think that I want to leave with one story, because I think we're talking about, we're all car guys here on the call, and obviously anybody that goes to SEMA is a car guy or a car gal. There was a pretty popular gas guy, if I can just say it, who just, for the last 3 years has been in my ear about, what are you doing, BJ? EVs are appliances on wheels. You're driving a toaster, and I finally just asked him, I'm like, you know what? Have you ever driven an EV? He's like, oh, no. So I brought him out to a festival, and he finally had an experience with an EV, and his entire tune changed. Like, he's no longer calling me, telling me I'm a buffoon for what I'm doing. He's actually asking me questions about modifying his EV that he bought. So I think that the experience with these vehicles are really what is going to turn the tide, if I can even call that. Not that the tide needs to be turned, but I guess change people's minds who might be more skeptical about going EV. And I think that's where the experiential part of our festival is really just kind of like creating a lot of these light bulb moments for this next generation of consumer who certainly there are a lot of new car culture, next gen car culture people who are coming to our show, who are looking at modifying their vehicles, and will go to SEMA members looking for ways to make their cars and trucks look cooler and go faster. So I really am just super appreciative of all the time you spent with us today and kind of giving us your point of view on the industry and everything else.
Two things. I want a name. Okay. I want to know who that was. The other one is, I think, BJ, you really hit on the head, and I love listening to you guys talk. Messaging. You got to know your audience. You got to know who you're talking to. If you're talking to Spags, which obviously big Nissan guy, like what playing off of his automotive DNA, because here we are at aftermarket. The guys that have the Ruined Car Club, right? Not exclusive to Tesla, but all things EV that are modified. Their car. I don't know if you know the Spags, but this car club's called Ruined, which I just love the name in itself. Oh, you ruined that car. Yeah, happily. Yeah, I ruined it. By modifying it. Yeah, by modifying it. It's messaging. Like you said, I love the way you started. You went right for the jugular as far as you guys are on the same page. You're talking about government mandating, talking about the consumer and what they really want. The Lightning is kick ass. Like talking to Ron Carr and Hyundai, like you said, here's these Chinese manufacturers, where here's a Korean manufacturer that is absolutely spearheading in so many different ways, talking about the shifting, talking about the audio, the experience, the drift thing. The evolution is happening. We're a broken record, dude. Every podcast, it's like, well, I need it to shift and I need an exhaust sound. And BJ, you said, I love the skepticism. And that's why when you asked me to host this podcast, I'm coming like a big dumb animal. I don't even have an EV, but I want change my mind, right? Change my mind. Anybody listening to this is like, okay, what's Spags got to say about, SEMA show? Here's started in 1967, 3,000 people, Dodger Stadium. Now look at it. It's a behemoth. It's a unit of measure. Second largest trade show in Las Vegas, or number one. Number one that happens annually. My bad. I digress. Voice of SEMA
that's
show.
Right.
But here's my 17-year-old son where I'm like, do we go EV with him? He drives a Corolla 5-door. But this is healthy, man. Again, the voyeurs are listening.
Look,
And I'm seeing Electrify Expo at SEMA show. I'm seeing that that extension. I mean, look, SEMA show bought PRI. PRI is a compliment. It's aftermarket, more internal. I'm just saying. Did we just digitally shake hands?
Thanks for brokering the deal. You're cut in, Jarod.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, look, again, I think it's we're embracing the technology. I think it's one of several technologies we're for it. I would love to see innovation. I'd love to see manufacturers, more manufacturers come with new ideas, fresh ideas. We got to just continue to let that happen and let the adoption take place as it takes place.
Yeah, don't force feed it, right? And that's the big organic feel of it. And again, just I mean, look at Priuses. They look, the original Priuses look like door wedges, and now the new Prius is kind of sick,
so
sweet. And so like sweet. The Lucid Airs keep popping up at intersections. I'm like, dude, Lucids look fire. The Hyundai, the the iconic N. Like I said, that car, I mean, it's racing Pikes Peak, the fastest of Pikes Peak, Romain Dumas with the IDR.
Right.
It's all coming, Jarod. I mean, what you're pointing out is that there's more and more offerings coming online, and that's providing more opportunities to appeal to more consumers. And so, that's going to help continue to kind of steer that trajectory that we're talking about. So I'm really bullish on where things are headed, for sure, with the industry and all the amazing technology and offerings that are coming down the pipe.
Yeah. Look, it's what is it you need a vehicle for, and what's its purpose, and what are you using it for? My youngest son, Mikey, he drives a Tesla Model 3 to work every day. Loves it. He also has a crew cab GMC 2500 truck because he needs that for towing the race car and the in the jet skis and those sorts of things. So it is, what do you need a vehicle for, and we should allow the consumer to decide what their driving conditions are, and let the consumer make a choice based on that.
It's exciting. I think it's exciting times, and I'm really looking forward to SEMA Show 2024. Again, I'll be out there. Spags, BJ, I'm sure you'll be out there. And this is just that evolution. And again, Spagnola, just BJ at the helm of this, just an absolute hater on EVs. And then he got converted. Now he's in Texas and he's running this Electrify Expo. And like, it's, I mean, if that can happen, it can really happen to anybody.
Yeah,
totally. Yep.
Yeah. Great. Well, and we got to work together. We all have to work together to make sure we can continue to modify vehicles. And that's the unified voice. We can all argue over technology, but we got to be unified on allowing the ability to continue to modify vehicles, because we all want to personalize. We all want to be different. We all want to put a different set of wheels or whatever it might be. And as crazy as that sounds, it's getting to a point where it's hard to put a set of wheels on a vehicle without it throwing off some sensor.
Absolutely. Yeah. My wife's at NW Co. And you look at formerly Wheel Pros, now Hoonigan, just this constant evolution. So you're fighting the good fight, and the Lorex speaks, dude. And I think you do a good job as far as coming from an enthusiast standpoint. And that's when I found out, you were at the helm. I'm like, duh, this is a no brainer. I mean, the poster behind him, Street Scene. I mean, here you are establishing this company, selling it right down the road from where BJ and I initially met when he was at McGuire's. And look at BJ's lineage, going to Mopar, awesome. Developing the drifting program, developing motorsports. And now it's just super exciting to see, again, where EV's at with Nitrocross, with Extreme E, going to Extreme H, hydrogen powered now. So motorsports plays a major role. Aftermarket, EV, it's all cyclical. And look at the technology that they're developing, even from scooter technology, talking to Dakota, 4-time electric scooter champion. They're taking a scaled down version of EV in a 2-wheeled scooter basis, and then you pump it up, put it on steroids, then it goes to a car. Then it goes to Nikola, it goes to trucking, it goes to transport, it goes to, scaled, right? So it's exciting, man. But aftermarket, I modified my body with tattoos. Why the hell wouldn't I modify my car? And if it is an iconic, or if it is a Lightning, and you see what people are doing, Cybertrucks, they're having a hell of a time, heavy D Sparks, putting paddles on it, jumping that damn thing, unplugged performance. Ben's doing a great job, developing, like you said, the function is the fashion. So, those the sport line splitters, aerodynamic efficiency, it's cool. It's really cool.
All of it.
Yep.
Cool.
Closing thoughts, BJ, Spags, go for it.
No, I mean, I think that if there's any opportunity for us to be a resource to all, to see you Spags or any of your members, I want to roll out the red carpet for y'all, and just really grateful that not only you made time for us, but really excited to see what you have in store in growing SEMA and bringing in the electric component into the show and watching that grow.
Thank you. Same. Look, all of this makes for more opportunity, right? It's again, I don't see us as competitors. Or maybe that's how this conversation even started. But because we both put on these shows, right? These trade shows. It's more of all of that floats the boat. It's more of manufacturers being available to develop these products and have these products available. Look at you just take a truck. Right now, you can buy 20 different brands of running boards or sideboards for a truck, right? It just makes the opportunity for the industry to grow more, and it gives consumers choice. I'm a real big fan of that, and that's what we tell the OEs is that the ability to have more accessories available. It's not competing with their accessory program. It's the ability to have more individualized products available makes you sell more vehicles. That vehicle, this is going back 20 years ago now, right? But when I did that Mustang, the ability to have, I built that car 7 months before the 2005 Mustang came out. And the reason I did that, and the reason I worked with Ford on that, was that the day that vehicle became available on the market, those accessories were ready to go, and people could say, that's what I want to build. And they made the choice on what vehicle they wanted to buy based on accessories available for it. That's what makes this thing work. And OEs have got to realize that if they allow the aftermarket to continue to develop products, it's going to help them sell vehicles. And that's what it's all about. People are going to make a choice based on the ability to accessorize and modify and individualize based on what they love and what they need.
Okay, Spags. Okay, I'm sorry. Parting comment. You can only answer yes or no.
Okay.
Should Ford have called the Mach-E a Mustang?
Oh, God. Okay, you're going to get me in trouble here because I'm actually even doing a
yes or no, Spags. He said yes or no.
Okay.
We got the answer, Jarod.
No. So I'm a big fan of Ford. You guys know that I've done product development work with Ford in the past. I'm doing a panel with Jim Farley in a month in Pebble Beach. I have to say no.
Wow. What do you say, BJ?
Good for you to take a position. No.
No? I say yes.
Yeah,
I say yes.
I would have called it something else. I would have called it the Fusion or something.
They already have that.
More. I know. Well, they don't anymore. They killed the Fusion, right? So
the confusion.
All that product is so amazing. We have not only we had all trim levels of that Mach-E, including the GT. And we have a thrill zone dedicated to Ford at our festival where they're ripping people around in the GT and blowing people's minds. It's an amazing product. But man, really the polarization around calling that vehicle a Mustang has certainly created a lot of noise. But I think it's settling down. I think people have kind of nestled in. But I did see a tease, was it yesterday or today, that they are bringing back an old Mark and going electric with it. And I'm like, now what are they going to do? Like, what old Mark is it? They got a new one coming.
Yeah. What do you think it is?
We'll have to see.
Like a Ranchero?
What would that be?
A Ranchero
what would that be?
God.
Yeah.
A Ford Ranchero. That'd be fine. I beg to differ, BJ. I think it's on point that they call it the Mustang because it's playing off the emotion of it. You're kind of pissing people off that are Mustang loyalists, 65, 60, 70, whatever, but you're playing off of that emotion and back to the messaging. It's innovation. It's pushing technology. That's what the Mustang was. It's doing all that. It's challenging the consumer. And then it's like, oh yeah, I know what a Mustang is. Mach-E, interesting. Because there's been some bad ones. Like I just, hosted the 60th out in North Carolina. And there's like that was it like, oh God, the 70s? Holy cow, that was a bad one. Small. But yeah.
You're outnumbered on this one, Jarod.
It's fine,
brother.
Look,
I wonder how many people bought it because it was called the Mach-E versus how many didn't because they were like, they bastardized the name. I don't know.
I know Leno said it should be called the Mustang. Leno was like, ow.
Yeah, those guys are smarter than me, I think, when it comes to marketing, I think.
Yeah. Well, you do a good job, man. Again, SEMA is not just a trade show. It's an organization that is fighting the good fight. So as you said, rising tide lifts all ships. Let's keep this battery going, keep the charge flowing, and let's have some fun, man. And that's really what it's all about is messaging, engaging. It's not your grandkids, it's not your granddad's car, it's your grandkid's car, and that's the future. We talked about so many different things that we could go on and on and on. And I loved hearing you guys engage. BJ, thank you so much, man. Obviously, president, founder of Electrify Expo. Go check one out. And Spags, obviously, thank you for all that you do. Forging SEMA Garage. I saw you in DC just recently, fighting the good fight for all of us, not just SEMA show, but the people that are racing cars, modifying cars, customizing, and talking to the OEs, like you said, talking to Jim Farley. So Spagnola, you come from a very authentic place, and you can't duplicate the equity that you have. So thank you for all that you do for the people, SEMA and SEMA show.
And Jarod, thank you as well. And BJ, thanks. It's an honor to be with you guys. And I'm glad we finally got a chance to do this because we don't get a chance to connect very often. But thank you guys both. And Jarod, for all you do for SEMA as well, and all you do for the industry. It's fun to see you at Drift and everywhere, around this industry. You guys we are a passion-based industry, and that's what keeps us all going, right?
Yes, sir.
That's why we're here.
Yes, sir. Cool. Well, thanks again. Right. Be sure to check out SEMA Show. Yeah, on IG, websites, do all those things. And of course, Electrify Expo sliding into your town or in your hood. Make time. Go check out Electrify Expo. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Send it. Thanks for listening to the Electrify podcast, brought to you by the creators of Electrify Expo. Be sure to catch full video episodes on YouTube at Electrify TV and follow along on social media for daily clips and more.